Hey, friends! Welcome back to Coffee and Compliance. I'm Ashley, and if you're new here, hi, welcome. Hope you are having a great morning, afternoon, or evening, depending on when you're tuning in. Make sure you grab your coffee, your tea, your matcha, or whatever you are sipping on right now, and let's jump into this week's episode where we talk about what HR actually does and also what it does not. Okay, so let's get started, but before we jump into it, and because this podcast is called Coffee and Compliance, we have to start out by chatting about coffee, of course. Today's coffee that I'm drinking is just a Texas Pecan roast, and it's from Aggieland Coffee, which is based out of College Station, Texas. It's nothing fancy, just plain and strong and delicious, of course. Much like HR, this coffee is doing more behind the scenes than you may realize. All right, let's get into it. So let's start with the biggest HR misconception that there is. HR is only here to protect the company. I hear this almost every day that, HR, they just don't care about the employees. They're just here to protect the company. HR is not your friend. But let me just say, HR doesn't wake up excited to ruin vibes. HR is here to try and prevent lawsuits. Is HR aware of company risk? Yes. Is HR responsible for keeping the company legally compliant? Also yes. But here's the part people miss. Protecting the company and protecting the employees are not opposites. A healthy, compliant workplace requires fair treatment, clear expectations, and accountability on all sides. When HR is doing their job correctly, employees are safer, policies are clearer, and problems get addressed before they become lawsuits, burnout, or mass resignations start happening. HR isn't your enemy. However, we are also not your personal lawyer, your personal therapist, or fixer of every bad manager. And I think that's where the confusion starts. Now let's talk about what HR actually handles behind the scenes. First, compliance. Compliance is like, I would say, flossing. Boring, annoying, but absolutely necessary. HR keeps the company aligned and up to date with labor laws, wage and hour rules, leave laws, anti-discrimination requirements, OSHA postings, which we will be talking about in a few weeks, and so much more. Most of this work is invisible until something goes wrong. The second thing HR actually does is handle policies and procedures. I'm talking attendance policies, harassment policies, parental leave, discipline procedures. HR writes them, updates them, and enforces them. And yes, laws change constantly. That's why policies are ever changing too. The third thing that I think takes up so much of HR's time and energy is employee relations. This includes investigating complaints, addressing conflict, coaching managers, documenting issues fairly and consistently, and so much more. HR's role here isn't to take sides. It's to gather facts, apply policy, and recommend next steps that are lawful and fair. Many managers forget that a lot. The fourth thing is manager support. A lot of HR work is spent helping managers do their jobs better. How to have hard conversations, how to document performance issues, and how to avoid creating legal problems unintentionally. And finally, which is probably my favorite, is culture and people strategy. That's a really big part of HR's job. And when done well, HR helps shape the onboarding experiences, retention strategies, benefits and leave programs, and communication practices. That's the side of HR most people don't see, but it is so critical. Now that we've talked about what HR actually does, let's now jump to what HR does not do. HR does not override company leadership. We can advise, recommend, and flag risk, but we don't always make final decisions, unfortunately. Another thing is that HR does not ignore policy because someone gets upset. I get it. Feelings matter, especially in the workplace. But policies exist for consistency and fairness and for protection. And this is a big one. HR does not share confidential information. If you've ever thought, HR didn't do anything, well, it might be because they couldn't tell you what they did. Another one, HR is not a replacement for direct communication. We can't fix issues that were never reported, or expectations that were never clearly set between employees and managers. Again, HR can't fix what we don't know about. And no, vibes do not count as documentation. And one big thing that a lot of people forget is that HR is not perfect. Like any profession, there are great HR teams and there are not so great ones as well. So why does it matter? Why does it matter whether I know what HR actually does versus what HR does not do? Well, understanding HR's role helps everyone. Employees know when to escalate issues versus when to start with direct conversations themselves. Managers learn how to partner with HR instead of fearing it. And companies avoid unnecessary conflict and legal risk. This podcast exists to explain the gray areas, the things no one tells you until you're already dealing with them. Next week, we're talking about why HR is emotionally exhausting. And yes, that's a real thing. And if you've ever said, HR must be such a nice and easy job, well, next week's episode is for you. If this episode made you rethink HR even a little bit, share it with a coworker or friend who loves to say, HR is useless. Thank you for listening to Coffee and Compliance. New episodes drop every Monday morning at 8 a.m. Central. And until next time, keep your coffee warm and your workplace compliant.